everyone, and welcome back to another video. Yes, this weekend, and quite possibly only for this weekend, Imola makes a return to the Formula 1 calendar. And even though it's been some 26 years now, it still holds a very painful memory for me, as it was of course the track in which Ayrton Senna sadly lost his life. It's very difficult nowadays to explain what actually happened on that fateful weekend. Of course, we'd already had the death of Roland Ratzenberger on the Saturday, and then of course on the Sunday, Ayrton Senna had his tragic accident. Now of course back in those days there was no internet. We had phones, but they were sort of the size of houses, and they were basically reserved for the rich and shameless, so we just had to wait. And wait we did, which seemed like forever. We had a service in the UK called CFAX, which we used to get our news from, but of course the trouble with that is you had to keep typing in the page to refresh it, and unfortunately there was very little news coming out of Ayrton Senna's condition. So we just had to wait. All we had was TV and radio back then, and of course our main news was the BBC 6 o'clock news. So what seemed like an eternity, we waited and waited for hours and hours until finally it was time for the BBC News at 6 o'clock.
Good evening. The former world motor racing champion Ayrton Senna has been pronounced clinically dead after a crash at this afternoon's San Marino Grand Prix. Senna suffered serious head injuries when his car left the track and crashed into a concrete wall. He's being kept on a life support machine because of Italian law, but a spokesman for the hospital in Bologna said there was no chance he would survive.
And our greatest fears had been realised. Ayrton Senna was indeed dead. And then finally, the voice of Formula 1 came on our televisions. Mr. Murray Walker.
This is the blackest day for Grand Prix racing that I can remember in the many, many years that I've been covering the sport. We've had fatalities before, and in a sport that is dangerous and where the drivers know it in their heart of hearts, although they never expect it to happen to them, for there to be 2 casualties on successive days is quite appalling, and that one of them should be arguably the greatest driver who has ever lived in the history of Grand Prix racing makes it doubly so. Ayrton Senna was a great personality, not only as a driver but as a man. He was a very successful businessman. He was supreme in almost every way in the sport, and to say that his loss is tragic is a masterpiece of understatement.
Murray, with 2 drivers killed in 24 hours, where does this leave Formula 1 racing?
Well, everybody is shocked and stunned here, and it's very easy to make emotional judgments. Without wishing to sound callous, I have to say that this sort of thing has happened before. It will happen again. Motor racing is dangerous. The important thing is that drivers should not take spectators with them. As I said a moment ago, they enter the sport knowing what the risks are. I don't agree with the suggestions that the Imola circuit is dangerous. We've had turbo cars here in the past which went faster than the cars we have today. We've only recently had the active suspension that was in vogue last year banned, and I don't personally believe that's made any difference. I honestly do think that this is just a hideous chain of circumstances, coincidences, which have all come together.
So a very tragic weekend indeed. But as Murray said, it wasn't the fault of the circuit. It was just a tragic and bizarre set of circumstances that were put in motion that caused all those problems on that fateful Sunday in 1994. Anyway, here's a lap of the Imola circuit, the last time we saw it on F1 Championship Edition.
The San Marino circuit is 4.9 kilometers long and 17 turns. It is one of the rare anti-clockwise tracks. Off the short grid, it's right up to 290 to 300 kilometers an hour across the Tamburello chicane. To get through, it's down to second at about 130 kilometers an hour. Then it's back up to full speed across to the Villeneuve chicane. Downshifting to get round and moving to the right up the track for the slowest part. The toes a left-hand turn which leads uphill. At the top of the hill, as high as 7th gear, it's Piratella. Full of camber to the left, gaining speed. Back up to 180, 200, 250, 290 kilometers an hour. Over 3.5 Gs at turn 9. straight to Acqua Minerale, right down to 115 kilometers an hour at the bottom. Then it's top speed and across to the left for the harsh turns of Variante Alta. Then the downhill straight at over 300 kilometers an hour for turn 13, and down to 100 kilometers an hour for the Ragazza left-hand turn. Be careful not to lock the wheels there. Past a slight kink and into the final tight chicane, straight lining it as much as possible. Then it's back to the grid and the finish.
So there you go, a lap of Imola, the last time we saw it on F1 Championship Edition. But it didn't go away from there because it actually reappeared one more time on PlayStation on F1 2013. Yes, in the classics section, of course. Fantastic. So we're going to drive now as Mr. Nigel Mansell. Nigel Mansell. Let's see how we do. Well, more importantly than that, how do you think the race is going to go on Sunday? Well, let's hope little Lulu doesn't get cramp again, eh lads? Eh? Oh, Bono! Bono! I've got cramp in my leg! I've got cramp in my leg! Oh, but it's okay, I'm still driving one-handed for style points. Bono! Bono! Did you order my pepperoni pizza? You know I like to sit down with Roscoe straight after the race. Bono! Bono! Did you remember to renew my Netflix subscription? Because you know I like to watch Drive and Survive, because that Gunther Steiner, he says some very rude words. Ah, fuck. There you go, a little bit of comedy for you. I love little Lulu, really, you know. I love him, yes. I think he's a great ambassador for the sport and motor racing in general, and I'm very, very happy every time he wins a Grand Prix. But on the flip side of that, he's also a needy little prick who has his own agenda for things that he thinks need to be done. Well, I have to say, Lewis, that you haven't actually got a clue about what happens in the real world while you're sitting up there in your glass house. And maybe if you come round to where I live, I could show you what real poverty and deprivation is really like. Anyway, that's enough from me. How do you think the race is going to go, lads? Well, I think little Lulu's probably going to win it once again at Imola, yes. And Sebastian Vettel is possibly going to finish 12th again, unfortunately, due to the fact that Ferrari are sticking lots of ballast in his car right now. Well, that seems to be the norm of what's happening, isn't it? While Charles Leclerc will probably finish in 4th, and Lando Norris will probably have to apologise again to his fans for saying something out of turn. I've no idea why, but there you go. That's the world we live in right now. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the race, and I'll see you again for another video.